Now, here's the hosts of Top Story, Kelly Klass and Jill Skeen.
Good morning and welcome to Top Story. 736-0300 is always the number to call. And good morning, Jill.
Good morning, Kelly. Thursday, although I'm sure we think it's Wednesday because my trash is still out there. That's right.
Whenever we have a day off during the week, it always just throws things out of kilter, you know?
But it means Friday's tomorrow.
I know, and I'm really glad.
I am too. I'm tired.
Today, I'll just kind of let you know.
What?
On Thursdays, I leave a little bit early.
Not from the show.
Because from work.
I'm like, what? Are you going to cut out at the 9 o'clock hour?
I might.
Listen up, people. This will be my hour. Look what we're going to be talking about.
Some members of our ham radio club meet at the airport at noon on Thursdays, just for fun.
Yeah.
And to talk over
I've run
stuff,
into you out there when I've had to take my mom
and
or
I've
something.
had to miss, I think, the last two.
Oh,
so
no.
Hopefully I'll be able to make it today.
So if anyone wants to know where Kelly Klass eats lunch on Thursday.
That's right. It's at the
airport. At the airport with the hammers. And do you eat ham?
Once in a blue moon.
Is that the official lunch of the hammers?
I usually have a salad.
Chef salad.
Yeah.
I'm sure it has some ham on it.
Or a tuna salad.
I'm sure Chef salad has a ham on it.
Yeah.
You got to have low ham if you're in a ham radio club.
Yeah, that's right. So anyway, coming up at 8:20, we're going to find out about Operation, or is that at 8:30, I guess? No, it's at 8:20. We're going to find out about Operation Deployment.
8:20. We have the cops at 8:30.
That's right.
Don't forget the cops.
Today it's the Idaho State Police.
There you go.
So we'll see if they make it today.
Oh,
they've made it.
They've always made it.
They've always made it.
Just,
I think it was. It was the county the last time, but it was a little late. He did make it.
Yeah, he was doing fair duty.
That's right. So he had an excuse.
Yeah.
And then at 9 o'clock, we have author Patrick Lee. And Patrick lives in the Sun Valley area, and he has written a book, and I didn't even bring the book in with me. It's called Kickers. It's about the secret war in Laos during the Vietnam War era. It is a novel, so it's
based on truth. He used to be a smoke jumper, and it's about the smoke jumpers in the secret war before the Vietnam War. So anyway, it should be very interesting.
I'd love to talk about that kind of stuff. I think it's going to be very interesting.
And I heard it's a real page turner.
Yeah, and it's a thick one too. It's a big book with small print.
No, so Kelly's going to really have to work at this one.
It's going to take me years to read that one. But at any rate,
I heard it keeps you up at night. If you read the reader's reviews on his website, they're like, I made the mistake of starting it before I went to bed. And 4 a.m, I was still up reading. So that's always a good book. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, so that's all coming in. Meanwhile, we do have some news for you this morning, and I suppose since we are the Vandals station, we need to tell you that the Idaho Vandals will not play the Florida Gators this season, but they will in 2017.
Well, no, they did start to play them. That was the part that was the problem.
That's the reason for this story.
Because when they started, I think they got one playoff.
Yep.
And then there was horrible lightning storms and lightning and thunder, and they couldn't continue the game. So basically, I think this is good for the Vandals because they can actually say they tied the Florida Gators. I mean, I was shocked they're on the schedule to begin with, but you know what? That's what happens.
Yeah, and they are going to get their payment of $975,000.
Back, Well, they were going to be paid that if they played, but the thing of it
they decided they were going to pay them anyway.
Right? Because which is nice. They traveled out there, and that's called an act of God.
Yeah, it is.
But it was interesting because they could have played again in October, but then the Vandals wouldn't have had a break.
Yeah, they would
one game off. They both have had
And then they were thinking about when at a later time. I know it's here in the story somewhere, but the Florida Gators could have been in the.
October 25th, they could have played both of them. Oh, October 25th, they both had a bye, except the Vandals would have been playing 11 weeks in a row. And then they said in December. But, Florida Gators are usually in the SEC championship.
Well, that's why they didn't set it for later.
Yes, because the Vandals usually don't have trouble with their postseason schedule. They never make it to the postseason, bless their hearts.
Now watch it.
Hey, that's just how it is.
I know.
I'm sorry.
I know.
But anyway, they can say they tied the Gators 0-0.
So at any rate.
Good for them. Go Vandals.
Now, speaking of universities.
Yes.
An Idaho State University instructor was wounded in the foot after a concealed handgun in his pocket discharged during a chemistry lab session with students in the room.
Yeah.
This could have gone so much worse in so many ways.
Mm-hmm.
There is no excuse for this happening.
Well, we have guns on campus now.
I know, but hey, he might have had the gun anyway. And if he did then he would have really been in trouble. And he might be in trouble now. But at any rate, it could have gone a lot worse in so many ways. But this is one of those kind of inexcusable things that happen once in a while.
Well, I mean, it's like, okay, you passed the law in July. Now, this is what's going to get attention. It was picked up by Reuters. This is national news now. I mean, really, you have guns on campus. The professor has a concealed weapon in his pocket, and he shoots himself in the foot. And you're like, oh, my gosh.
Of course, it could have gone the other way. It could have been that they had an active shooter, and this professor got his gun and put a stop to it, too.
Well, it could have been, but that's not the situation. And I think if he was sitting down, he could have shot a student.
He could have,
and
absolutely.
My gosh. And
a meteorite could have fallen through the roof and killed everybody.
But that's not what's happened. But I'm just saying, and then I love how the ISU, was it President? I don't see the quote on here where he said, we're the safest university around or something. Where was that quote? It's not in this story.
I don't know.
Anyway, but I thought, of course you are, because we will shoot ourselves before you shoot us. Don't worry about that. I was like, oh, my gosh, my gosh.
This is one of those things that makes the gun community look bad. I realize.
How could it not?
But it's not. It's an accident that happened, and it's an accident that should not have happened had the gun been properly secured. First of all, carrying a gun in the pocket is not a good practice.
But
this was
weapon.
This was a semi-automatic handgun, and I'm pretty sure, as most of them do now, it probably had the little trigger safety. And when you put your finger on the trigger, that releases the safety. I wouldn't be caught dead carrying one of those in my pockets. I have never trusted them. And to be fair, I've not had one, but I wouldn't get one because of that. When I carry concealed, I carry a revolver, a small revolver, for so many reasons, many of which include safety. But at any rate, yeah, it's too bad that happened. It's embarrassing. It's bad for the Second Amendment movement.
Idaho.
It's bad for the. But you know what? It happened, and how many people died in other accidents yesterday that we're not hearing about
using guns? But you know what? I'm glad a student wasn't hurt, and you have to wonder if that guy's going to carry a gun again.
7360300, top story. You're on the air. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Kelly. Good morning, lovely Jill. Hey, I'm going to leave the Second Amendment for some other day, but Jill.
What?
Good luck to your Buckeyes, and I hope they make it all the way.
I know. They actually beat Navy. I was shocked.
Yeah. Well, if it's not sacrilegious for you, and if you want to cheer for a good team, the Trojan Nation, that's this Saturday against Stanford.
Wait, which one?
USC Trojans.
Oh, the Trojan Nation.
Yeah.
You know how the Big Ten and the Pac-12, I don't know.
Yeah, well, if you want to cheer for them, feel free. Good luck.
Okay, thanks.
Wow.
There you go.
He didn't insult me today. I almost feel sad.
Oh, really? Maybe he'll call back. The show still has a good time left.
That's right. 7360300. Top story. You're on the air. Good morning.
Yes, that guy that shot himself, that bullet went off. They should just let him have one bullet and keep it in his pocket like Barney Fife.
I know, huh? I mean, really, can you imagine what the students were thinking as they just heard this? And oh my god,
they were probably thinking, "Oh, thank God, it's not an active shooter. It's just
thank
a professor
God
whose
it
gun
wasn't
went
one
off."
of them.
I know, really. I mean, this could have gone wrong in so many ways.
I know.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just reading stuff here.
I'd hate to.
Little messages that come over my computer here. I'm going to send.
All right, Kelly. Yes.
Okay, so we don't have a guest at 8:20 today.
Oh, we don't.
No. Okay. So moving along, we got a caller. Yeah, that's right. Top story. Whoops, they decided they weren't going to hang around. Okay, so we've got that one. Now, what else have we got here? Let me hang up. Let me push the button here. I'm having a problem with buttons this week for some reason, and I don't know what it is.
I don't know.
Pushing buttons, pushing the wrong buttons. 7360300.
Push the right button.
Okay. And I push that, and then it won't go off, and I don't know. Okay, here's something else. Consumer data could have been stolen. Remember yesterday we were talking about the Home Depot credit card hack that someone got? Well, guess what? They say it probably it could affect all of the 2,200 stores, which would include the one in Twin Falls.
Yikes.
So if you bought anything in the last few months from Home Depot.
Was it April, May till now? Or when did they first discover this?
They first discovered it, I believe, in April.
But I think they said it went back to October 2013.
It went back to last year, so yeah.
So don't worry. I'm sure everything you bought for Christmas or something, that is terrifying.
I know it is.
It's terrifying.
I know, and that's why I said yesterday.
I'm racking my brain.
I'm going back to cash.
When did I shop there?
I know.
Start racking
Me too.
your brain.
7360300, top story.
What? Well, we're going to love busy signals today. What's going on with you?
Okay, no more calls.
Oh,
sorry.
Stop.
No.
No, what?
No more calls. We're not going to take any more calls.
Oh, stop. Stop. Just because you can't work the buttons, why should our listeners suffer?
Brad Krebs, who runs the website, had said on Tuesday that the problem could affect all of the Home Depot's 2,200 stores in the United States. On Wednesday, he said he found new evidence that the breach first surfaced on the website Rescator, where customer credit cards were listed according to store zip code. These codes showed a 99.4% overlap with Home Depot stores. In all, there were 1,939 codes corresponding to Home Depot store locations. It is not yet clear how many customers were impacted, but Home Depot has not confirmed that a breach occurred.
They're like, what breach? I didn't see a breach. Did you see a breach?
Company spokeswoman Paula Drake said the retailer is working with leading IT security firms, including Symantec Corporation and Fishnet Security, to investigate whether there has been a data breach.
Okay, I'm sorry, but I think you should inform people. If people are saying there's a breach and you're denying there's a breach and you're working with security, you should give customers a heads up.
Well,
why are they denying it?
I'm a little confused here because the story earlier said that the credit card information was available for sale on one of those websites on the internet.
Right.
And now Home Depot is saying, well, we're not sure there was a breach. Well, if there wasn't a breach, then where did they get the credit card information to put on the website?
Yeah, and it wasn't who was it? The FBI or Homeland Security found it?
I guess it was Homeland
Security, the malware.
They said our forensics and security teams have been working around the clock since we first became aware of a potential breach Tuesday morning. The retailer sought to reassure customers Wednesday that they will not be held responsible for any possible fraudulent charges.
Fine, that's what they need to say.
It also asked them to closely monitor their accounts and said it'll offer free identity protection services, including credit monitoring to any customers who may have been affected.
But we don't have a breach.
I don't know.
We're just saying in the event we have a breach.
It's not been confirmed.
Oh, my.
We'll be right back. 7360300 is the number to call. 7360300 is the number to call this morning on Top Story. Well, not just this morning, but actually every morning here on Top Story.
Every morning.
I was going to talk a little bit here about the folks at Far More of Idaho and their infrared Baron. They do overflights in real airplanes.
Is that amazing?
Yeah, not drones, but real airplanes.
Not those paper ones, not those cardboard ones.
That's right. They fly over the fields, and they take infrared photography of your fields, and then they give you that information if you buy into this service, and then you can make certain adjustments based on what you see. For instance, you might see some dry spots in your pivot, and you might think, gee, that's funny. That's getting the same amount of water as everywhere else, or so you thought. So you can see these images, you can make adjustments, you can increase your yield, and hence put more money in the bank. Just because of these infrared Baron overflights from Far More of Idaho, you can ask them all about it. They got all the answers. 324-3341 is the number to call. You can get them online at farmoreofidaho.com. Ask him about infrared Baron. So we just got a few minutes here before the cops come in at 8:30. Have you ever heard of helicopter parents?
Yes, I have.
I guess it's quite a problem.
Quite a problem.
Apparently, John Gibraltar is the president of Frostburg State University.
I don't even know where that one is.
I was going to say.
Wait, what? And you actually have students? But anyway, go on.
But he has had parents call him at his office to talk about a squabble that their child is having with a roommate. Mm-hmm. And he says, don't you trust your child to deal with this on his own, he asks, Rather than telling a son or daughter to talk to a resident assistant or a resident director, parents will immediately call my office. And that I consider to be a little over the top.
You think?
I'm wondering how many of our listeners this morning, have you called the president of a college to complain about how your little child was having problems with roommates or teachers or other issues? I'm just kind of curious. I don't know if anybody would actually be brave enough to call and confess to something like that.
Well, HR people at jobs are getting calls from these kids' parents asking, for raises and stuff for their kids. And, at some point you have to let them do this stuff on their own. But if you haven't given them the skills to deal with stuff, if you've done everything for your child.
That's right.
My parents were pretty busy and were working a lot. You sort of had to fend for yourself. And so, I think it tends to probably make you a little bit more independent than, if my mom or dad were hovering. I mean, they'd say, do your homework. I don't even, but we always did our homework. Yeah. So I don't know.
I have seen this picture going around on Facebook on occasion, that it used to be when the kid got in trouble, it showed the parents getting him in trouble or her at trouble at home. But now it shows the parents in the office with the principal with the kid chewing out the principal because their child got in trouble at school.
Well, I have to say, and I've said this before, I think the environment for parents in schools and college is a little bit more driven out east. I really do. I mean, you can't even get your kid into the right kindergarten. You have to sign up when you're basically pregnant to get your kid in the right preschool. And I'm not even joking about that. And they start in 7th grade trying to build the kid's resume. This is serious business. So I can see how, parents are going in there because they don't want it to be a bad record.
So this is a problem mainly back east.
Well, I think when it's a little more driven, but then look how the level of kids that go to college out here, I think parents are really, what I saw with my sister and her kids and their environment, oh my goodness gracious.
Are they helicopter parents?
I don't know, maybe a little, but not to the extent this is. But yeah, they would be involved in their kids' lives and stuff, and their kids have all done well.
One thing, but
the kids have all done well and went to good schools.
If they have an argument with the roommate, do they call the college president?
No, they would go after the kid. I remember
they would go after the kid, or they would tell their kid to go after the kid. My
parents would, or Amy and my brother-in-law, they would take it up with their child. I remember Hallie was in high school and one of her friends got drunk. And Hallie called David, that's my brother-in-law, and said, come over here. And her friend Katie was vomiting and all over the place. Wow. The parents were out of town or whatever, and David helped clean them up and this and that. And Katie's like, oh, Mr. Pliner, please don't tell my parents. Please don't tell my parents. And he goes, you're right, Katie, I'm not going to tell your parents. He goes, because you are. No, my brother-in-law, they are good, strict parents.
That's good.
They're supportive, but also, they would tell their kids, you don't drink till you're 21, and they didn't drink in front of their kids. Not that they were big drinkers, but no, they were good parents, but very involved too.
Top story. You were on the air. Good morning.
Good morning. This is a big problem with our cuddling society, and it's going all the way to the top. But I think it's a lot to do with a lot of people in cities. What do they do with their kids? When I was growing up, we got up, we had breakfast, and if it wasn't the school day, we're out of the house. Get out of the house, go do something.
Well, not to mention having to milk the cows and
all that kind of stuff, and that kind of
feed
stuff.
The horses.
So they get too coddled.
That's right.
Come on, college? If you can't take care of your own problems by the time you're in college, you might as well kiss it goodbye, because you're not going to be able to take care of yourself for the rest of your life.
Well,
I think the parents did their kids a disservice.
Oh,
honestly.
Absolutely. But I think this sounds to me like this is a problem mainly back east.
Well, I don't know. There are a lot, but
I don't know that we have that problem so much out here.
I don't see the driven part of college out here. That's what I'm saying.
736-0300 is the number to call. We got the cops next. I believe we have the Idaho State Police today. 736-0300 was the number to call here this morning on Top Story. And guess what? We have Sergeant Keith Thompson with us from the Idaho State Police. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Nice to have you back. And you're once a month.
Once a month.
Once a month.
My monthly time is here.
That's right. That's right. So, how is the new speed limit. Everybody wants to talk about the new speed limit and how fast can people really go.
We started the studies, and the studies are still out there at this time for as far as crashes and that type of stuff goes. But we've decided we probably ran more tickets this month than we did the same time last year this month, and it's because the officers are riding at 85, 86 miles per hour. Okay. We're a no tolerance speed state, so if you're going to push it 5 over,
and
there's a good chance you're going to get a ticket.
We just drove to Utah, and it was just amazing how fast people were going. And we're trying to go the speed limit, but I think we just ended up going 75. But you said, and I read in the paper, that a couple accidents have occurred because people can't judge how fast or how they can stop now because they're going a little bit faster.
Yeah, and I wouldn't know necessarily the meaning of it, but I know that we've had it seems like we've had 2 or 3 people smacking into the back of trucks and that type of stuff.
That can leave a mark.
Yeah, that could be a problem.
Yeah.
So you
one was a drunk driver, but so.
But do you think it's because when you're going a little bit faster now, you don't know how much distance should you have between someone now?
Well, they still need 3 seconds of distance. So in other words, if they passed a mile marker or something like that, the rear end of their vehicle, you should be able to count 1001, 1002, 1003 before the front end of your vehicle approaches that same mile marker. That's the 3-second rule is an excellent rule. They teach in driver's ed and everything. It's a good rule to go by.
And even that's pushing it sometimes too.
That can be pushing it. A lot of it depends upon the driver. I mean, a younger person is going to have a faster reaction time, but it takes normally about a second to realize danger.
Yeah.
And then to start applying the brake system at that point.
So that cuts it down to 2 seconds.
Correct. Yeah. So then
if you're texting, of course, then that.
You're texting, you're done. I mean, if
you're texting, you're done. You're like, I'm just about to hit a truck. And make sure you record that.
That big hazmat spill that we had last month that I sat on forever, it seemed like, was a driver just looked back because his dog barked. He knew the other truck was going slow because he had some maintenance problems. And the trucker knew he was coming up on him fast. His dog barks. He looks behind, sees a dog. He sees the dog's okay, looks back, and there's the truck. And,
oh, my gosh.
And
did the dog make it?
No.
The dog was killed?
It was killed in the fire, yeah. So.
Oh, my gosh. That's too bad. So, anyway, it's a jungle out there, and people got to be careful.
Following too close, I know people want to get where they want to go, and they seem, if you get right on the guy's bumper, maybe he'll go faster, but that's not true.
You know, another problem, and I just have to say, are the people who either don't realize that the speed limit was increased or they can't read signs.
Yeah.
Yeah, those people who can't read signs
shouldn't be driving.
These people
who think, I'm driving at 65 miles an hour because it's more safe.
Yeah,
it's actually not. And fuel economy,
But some people feel uncomfortable driving at 80, and you've got people going 85, 90,
then maybe they should take an alternate route.
Well, in Idaho,
maybe they shouldn't have raised the stupid speed limit.
Well, but that's the deal now. It's the law.
Yeah, because we just
These
have
same
so much
people
money.
were in danger at 75.
And Idaho doesn't have a minimum. So, yeah, I mean, the reality is if someone's doing like 45 on the road,
I can understand that's a
problem.
We're
probably going to get a hold of them. We have that sometimes, and
I'm sure because they're probably under the influence and think they're driving well, right?
Right.
736-0300, top story. You're on the air. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, I just called to say that when somebody's on my bumper, I usually end up going slower.
Yeah, we call that road rage. And no.
Yeah. Which brings up a question. I know sometimes when somebody's following too closely, the car ahead will kind of tap the brakes.
Yeah.
Is that not legal?
That's foolish. I mean, just think about it. You might tap your brakes and you might tap them a little too long and you're going to get rear-ended. And you could say, well, it's the other guy's fault, but injuries are injuries, and whether someone pays for your back injuries or not, you got back injury now for the rest of your life. I mean, it's just,
Just not a smart
thing.
Yeah,
it's a road rage thing, and the thing is a lot of our roads are 4-lane roads, and maybe move over if you can move over and let the fool pass. And we are big on driving too close. If we see someone following too close, we will pull them over and we'll give them a ticket.
Because sometimes you want to just tap it just to say, hey, dude, get off my tail.
Make sure there's enough space so if you're going to do something. I mean, it's not a wise thing to do.
Yeah.
All right, top story. You're on the air. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Jill, don't you like people having more money?
What? What does that have to do with it?
It has a lot to do with it. The truckers get paid by the mile.
Oh, well, they could drive 24 hours, too.
by going. No, they cannot.
I know. I'm being facetious.
But by having a 5 mile an hour more speed limit, you can get 5 miles in more a day, more per hour, and a 10-hour day, you can get 50 miles in. You just got paid more.
Don't you use more fuel?
I'm gonna say at this point, I think they should have left it to 75 and let the truckers drive 75 also. That would have made more sense to me. But, well, hey, we're out of time. Thanks for coming in.
Be safe out there, Keith.
Sergeant Keith Thompson with the Idaho State Police. And this is Top Story. 736-0300, the number to call here this morning on Top Story. Dave Hansen and the crew at Canyon Pond would like you to just stop in and say hi, if nothing else. You know, pawn shops are always fun to go in because their inventory moves so rapidly. You go in today and there's maybe nothing that really catches your eye, but you go in tomorrow and there might be several things, and that's the way a pawn shop works. Well, there are a lot of things to catch your eye here at Canyon Pond. Camping stuff, woodworking stuff. They got fishing equipment. They got tools. They've got guns. In fact, Dave wants you to stop in and check out how you could win a Savage 17 HMR with AccuTrigger. So he's got all the information there. It's easy to find. He's on Shoshone Street right across from Will's Toyota, right on the corner of the street there. It used to be, what was it, Body Image?
Body IQ.
Body IQ. It used to be Vickers Western Store many years ago, and for many years.
It used to probably be an empty lot at one point.
But
does anyone remember that empty lot?
It was probably a potato field at one point, many years ago.
You guys all remember? You know that potato field on the left-hand side of what's now Shoshone? Can we have a more earlier reference, please?
Right now, it's Canyon Pond.
All right.
So stop in and see Dave Hansen and the crew, and it's a fun store to stop in at.
Yeah, we still have to go. We keep talking about it. We haven't done it.
Isn't that funny how we just keep saying, one of these days. How many times have you told members of your family, one of these days we ought to have a reunion. One of these days we ought to get together and, just talk. But you never do. I don't know why that is. One of these days we should just get together and debate something.
Yeah, that would be a good question for if people had read the Times News today. Governor Butch Otter has declined to participate in the September 24th Times News debate against his challenger, Democrat A.J. Balukov. So anyway, not only is it disappointing to probably independents and Democrats or just normal constituents, the Republican leaders are disappointed as well. So instead, he's going to attend debates in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho Falls, and Nampa. But it's interesting because they had a quote from Steve Milligan, who's the Twin Falls County Republican chair.
Milligan. Well, I guess I don't know Steve Milligan.
We have a Steve Millington, who's the Twin Falls County Republican chair on our show once a week.
There must be two of them, and Steve never told us about the other Steve.
Steve Milligan and Steve Millington.
Okay.
What a coincidence. But the Steve Milligan said, I sometimes feel we're the sad, sorry stepchild in the Magic Valley. And but I think they look at us and say they're going to vote Republican anyway. It really ticks me off, something terrible. They need to come here so we can maintain our Republican leadership. And I have to agree with Steve. I agree with Steve on some things. But honestly, I have to say, I think this is terrible. I mean, Butch Otter can come down here for 2 hours at the fair. He was with you, last Friday, put on his cowboy garb and walk around like Mr. Governor Cowboy and shake hands, but you can't answer questions for your constituents. I think it's terrible. He's come down, he's done ribbon cuttings. He's called this the miracle of the Magic Valley when it's, makes him look good, or what's happening here. And then you can't come down to Twin. You'll go to Coeur d'Alene, but you can't come down to Twin and do a debate. I don't know. How do you feel about that, Kel? I think, why not? What are you afraid of? Why are you not coming down here? Is it because there's so many people? Do you think, a lot of these incumbents, a lot of them don't want to come on the radio. A lot of them don't want to do interviews. And a lot of them don't want to debate because they think, you'll just vote for them out of an R behind their name. And you know what? I think it's insulting to the voter.
Just to play the devil's advocate for just a second here, he is still the governor, and he does have governor things to do. But as far as participating in a debate, I think he could get down here, do the debate, and go back and not really take up that much time.
But he came down for the fair. He was at the Jerome Fair. He's at the Twin Falls Fair.
Well,
let's just dress up in our jeans and cowboy hat and
I don't know. I'm really not defending him because I think when it comes to politics, you should avail yourselves to the people as much as is humanly possible. And a debate
I think so too.
during an election time, I think, is very important.
Yes.
I think it needs to be done. I don't know. Maybe he had something going on September 24th. I don't know. But
I mean, the legislature isn't in session. And I would think that anyone...
Well, but just because the legislature isn't in session doesn't mean the governor doesn't have other things to do.
Yeah, he can come to fairs and shake hands and da-da-da-da-da-da. I'm sorry. I think it's a cop-out. I think it's insulting to the Magic Valley. And he's just assuming all of you guys are just going to, because he's got an R behind his name, vote for him. And you know what? I think it's a terrible assumption. I think he should... answer questions regarding his record, why anyone should even reelect him, really, at the state of affairs of Idaho. I just think it's terrible. I mean, I'm sorry, Twin Falls is a big city, and he uses it to boost his economic record with the miracle of the Magic Valley, ribbon cuttings, whatever the fair, but he can't answer questions. I'm sorry. I think that's terrible.
One of the things, and you just kind of touched on it briefly, one of the things that I wonder about is that with all this so-called controversy going on right now, with the problems that the Republicans had earlier at their convention, and you say that there are people out there who are dyed-in-the-wool Republicans saying they're going to vote Democrat this time.
Some of them are,
because I would like to hear from some of those. Because I'm just kind of curious as to how widespread it really is.
But I also think, he just assumes, well, they'll vote for me anyway. And I don't know. I mean, come on.
I think there's a lot of that going around. I really do. I mean, it's not just in a Republican state. It's also in a Democrat state. It's kind of an incumbent thing that once they're elected, then they don't really want to talk because for fear of saying the wrong thing.
He should say something. But Idaho Falls, Coeur d'Alene, and Nampa, wow. You can't come to Twin? I'm sorry, he's down here all the time.
736-0300, top story. You're on the air. Good morning.
Good morning. The last time he was on your radio station, at the end of his conversation, things went really bad, really fast. And he's going to hurt himself by not doing this. I didn't vote for him in the primaries, and everybody said they wanted changes, but yet they voted him back in, and now he's doing this. I think we get what we deserve.
I don't remember the interview where it went really bad.
Which one are you talking about earlier this week when our phones went south?
No.
No. When he was on there and he started talking about Common Core and everything else, and pretty soon it was a firestorm of phone calls that people that voted for him year after year, and after hearing what he said about his view of Common Core, I wasn't happy about it. And there are a lot of other people wasn't happy about it.
Well,
but yet they voted him back in the primaries. So,
but don't you think he should do a debate?
Jill, your thing is probably right because there's an R there. They're going to vote for him, and I probably will too because I don't want the Democrat. But it's.
Well, you should look at the Democrat.
I did look at him. Sorry.
Hey, I think he makes a lot of sense, but I don't know how anyone could look at Otter's record and go, okay, let's just vote him in. He's doing such a great job.
Well, hey, Idaho isn't perfect, but by golly, we're doing pretty good in some areas. Economically, we're doing pretty darn good. We've got our bills paid. We got our we don't have a deficit. There are a lot of states that are almost bankrupt.
Oh, my gosh.
No, but if you're going to just look at a few things and say, oh, Idaho is in terrible shape, there are some things that Idaho really shines in. There are some things in Idaho that many other states envy us for, and that is, first of all, our economic situation, because we don't owe any, we have a balanced budget. We're in good shape economically.
A lot of states have a balanced budget because that's what it is.
But many don't.
But how they've balanced it on the backs of the mentally ill, how they've balanced it on education. But I'm sorry, I think the governor should be down here doing a debate. He owes it, I think, to the people of Magic Valley. He sits there and uses it all the time, the miracle of Magic Valley. Do a debate. And if you're not doing a debate down here, then what are you afraid of? I mean, according to Steve Milligan, there's 150,000 Republicans down here. How many independents and Democrats? So I'm sorry, but
we need to
do
get a hold
debate.
We need to get a hold of this Milligan.
We got to call Millington to see if he has a number from Milligan.
Yeah.
I don't know who it is.
736-0300, top story. You're on the air.
Well, I just want to know if this policy of openness and answering questions, if Jill feels the same way about the president. I've heard you defend him many times, and the funny thing is you go look, and it's not hard to find, but the Washington Press Corps calls Obama the least accessible president ever. They said that he's less accessible than Bush was or Clinton, and this comes from U.S. News and World Report, CBS. I mean, these aren't exactly, like right-wing Fox News.
Even left-leaning reporters have been complaining about
I think, but fine. Yeah, I think transparency is important, but we're talking about the governor. Don't you think he deserves to or should debate down in Twin Falls? Don't you think the constituents down here deserve a debate to hear what his positions are against the Democrat, unless he's worried that, wow, if I say the wrong thing and I have 150,000 Republicans down there, they might not vote for me. I don't know. I think it's just, I think he owes it to the constituents down here.
7360300, top story, you're on the air.
Good morning.
Howdy do.
I wanted to ask the Democrats, what was it that attracted you to come to Idaho to start with? Because most of the Democrats are move-ins. They aren't people that have grown up here. And then, second question, if that attracted you to come to Idaho, why do you want to change it back to California?
I didn't come from California.
Wherever,
And I'm out here because...
What was it? What was it?
Well, obviously, you're a new listener. I'm out here. I met my husband in Philadelphia, and he was from Buell, Idaho. That's why I'm in Idaho. And
it's Tom's fault.
It's Tom's fault. That's right. And I met him in Philadelphia, so it wasn't like I've never visited Idaho before, and I don't know if I ever would have visited Idaho because you just don't think about it, when you live out east, or you don't think about visiting out here. There's so many places I've gone. But I didn't know anyone out here, and why would I come out here? I don't.
And now here you are.
And now here I am. And to make change, I mean, you don't have to be Democrat to make change, and you don't have to sit there and say, well, things are just okay because that's how it's always been. When you look at the statistics of what's happening with our kids, when you look at they're one of the highest states in minimum wage jobs, when you look at things like that, you're like, why wouldn't anyone want it to be better for our children and our future of Idaho? And a lot of times I've stood up to protect the state of Idaho. Years ago, when they tried to put that coal plant over our aquifer, Sempra, I went to Boise and I fought for that because I saw what it's like out east when you had acid lakes and you have pollution and you have dirty water, and people in Idaho were like, they're not going to do that. It's like, no, they are going to do that. So you know what? I've been a good steward for Idaho. I've raised a lot of money for this community. Are you kidding me with my fundraisers from Rotary?
Well, you don't have to defend yourself.
But people say, why are you here? And I'm in Idaho, but I've contributed to Idaho. I've contributed to this community, and you know what? And I think that's a good thing. And I have a say. I'm also pay taxes here.
7360300, top story. You're on the air.
Hi, good morning. If you look at how Butch Otter balanced the Idaho government, Idaho budget, he did it by taking money from the federal government, which makes the people of Idaho subject to the corruption of the federal government. You need to get hold of him. I mean, you don't want a Democrat in there by any means, but you need to get hold of Butch Otter and make him do right for a change.
Well, that's one of the reasons that he's so dead set against the expansion of Medicaid, because expansion of Medicaid would allow Idaho to get a lot more federal funding. And there's a lot of poor people who won't get the needed health care payment because of that. But it's kind of a two-edged sword. I don't want to get on that subject.
No, because it's actually costing our state more.
But he is against that.
It's costing our state more by him not doing it. Not to mention the 77,000 Idahoans that he obviously doesn't care about their health.
But in the meantime, it costs the American taxpayer, who are becoming a dwindling source, more money in the long run too, to make all of these payments to the state. So that's.
No, it doesn't.
That's what part of the problem is. No, it really does.
It doesn't.
What do you mean it doesn't? Oh, that's right.
The people the costs are going down.
They pick the money off of the trees behind the White House. That's where they get the money.
We're paying for these people in the emergency room, and this is costing our state more. There was an article today in the Statesman how much it's costing our state by him not expanding Medicaid. But you know what? He should do a debate and answer these questions. And you should call his office and say, what's wrong with doing a debate in Twin Falls? Why not?
Coming up next hour, we have author Patrick Lee is going to talk about his book Kickers, which is about the secret war in Laos. Should be very interesting. And some doom and gloom news coming up, too. Are we really doomed? And welcome back to the third half of Top Story. 7360300 is always the number to call. Welcome back, Jill.
Thanks, Kelly. Same to you.
It's a little bit on the chilly side this morning.
It was this. Yeah, it was. What's the temperature?
It's 51 right now.
Woo!
So, and when I got up this morning, I thought, I'm gonna put on a long sleeve shirt. So I did, and I even put on socks and shoes instead of my sandals this morning.
We are so honored today.
Yeah, as well you should be. So it's fall is in the air.
Yes, it is.
Some of you might have heard during the Vietnam War era about the secret war in that era. I guess what is the secret war in Laos?
Correct.
Okay. Yes. And I kind of remember hearing something about it, but I really don't know anything about it. And we have with us this morning Patrick Lee, author Patrick Lee. You're from the
Sawtooth Valley.
Sawtooth Valley. So you're north of Ketchum then?
Yes.
All right.
Right there at the North Pole.
All right. Yeah, exactly. And you have written a book called Kickers, and it's about the secret war in Laos. Now, it's a fictional book, but it's based on true accounts.
It's based on my interviews of 10 smoke jumpers who served in that war for the CIA as CIA employees, and who survived it. Not all of them survived. There were some 92 smoke jumpers hired during the course of the war by the CIA, and 1 in 10 died. That's about the same fatality ratio as frontline combat troops.
Wow.
And for people who don't know, you used to be a smoke jumper.
I was a smoke jumper.
Yes.
For 2 years, 1956, 1957. That was just before they invented gravity, and I left after that. I went to law school, and when I started practicing law in Washington, D.C., I started hearing about the deaths of my smoke jumper buddies in Laos. And man, I didn't know where Laos was. I found out, but it remained a mystery because no one knew anything about it.
And yet people were dying.
People were dying, and 3 United States presidents over a 13-year period of the war denied that it was happening.
Really? Which ones were those?
First of all, President Kennedy, who set it in motion for specific reasons I can talk about in a general way, because that's all I know is general. A lot of government secrecy, even to this day, about the war. And then President Johnson, and finally President Nixon. They all denied it was happening.
So it's fairly common knowledge now, I guess, that it did happen, although is it still a type of deal like Area 51? We know it's there, but nobody will say it is.
That's exactly right. I have a very good historian friend by the name of Timothy Castle, who's an Air Force intelligence officer, and I believe at one point our government's liaison to the government of Laos back in the war period. And Timothy's written 2 books about Laos, and he's said to me in personal conversation, there is so much myth and so much government secrecy to this day that we may never know the truth of the Laos War.
So when you got in contact with your smoke jumper buddies, or is that when you first found out about it, and how were they recruited by the CIA?
Excuse me. Before I contacted them, I started doing some reading and about the Laos War. There are things out there. Some of them are just made up junk, I've come to understand, but some of it's accurate reporting. But when I did that research in the literature, there was really no recognition of smoke jumper involvement in the war, their role in the war, and their role was very significant. And I came to understand why that was. The CIA told them, the smoke jumpers, don't talk about it. You aren't there, even though they were there. And like good old country boys, they just shut up, didn't say a thing, even to their friends.
Serving their country.
Well, they considered themselves patriots and soldiers of the United States.
And what was their mission? What were they told their mission was?
Let me take one step back and explain briefly, if I can,
Sure.
in a general way, why we were there. In the 1950s, and this occurred in 1961, the war began then. In the era leading up to it, the driving force in U.S. Foreign policy was containment of communism. And the doctrine, the theory by which we did that was called the domino theory. You have to prevent the fall of the first domino. And at his inauguration, I've read this, Eisenhower, the outgoing president, said to Kennedy, your biggest problem is going to be preventing the first domino from falling. And that first domino is Laos. 2 months after his inauguration, there was a small coup in Vientiane, Laos. It wasn't even related to communism. It was just a paratroop battalion commander who was tired of corruption, and after he did the coup, he handed the government back to the same guys. But the Soviet Union and North Vietnam took advantage of this minor coup and jumped in there to establish a communist government in Laos. So 2 months after his inauguration, Kennedy was faced with preventing the fall of the first domino. He wanted to do this through diplomatic negotiation with Russia. But meanwhile, there was a coup underway. The Russians were there. So he was afraid that if he confronted Russia militarily in Southeast Asia, that would escalate, turn into a nuclear war. So he directed the CIA to fight a deniable war using surrogates. No U.S. military. Don't want a confrontation. But you've got to stop what's going on in Laos. So it was a counterinsurgency, a classic counterinsurgency. And what you do, I say this authoritatively like I really know, when you set up a counterinsurgency is to recruit the locals to do the fighting. You're not going to be there.
Right.
And they recruited the best fighters in Laos, the Hmong. They were called Mao then. That was a derisive term hung on them by the Chinese. But they were the best fighters in Laos, in peace-loving Laos. And but recruiting them to do the fighting created an enormous logistic problem for the CIA. Laos at the time was a roadless, landlocked, mountainous, triple canopy jungle. How do you supply your army, your Hmong, these barefoot people wandering around the forest? How do you, if you take all the Hmong men, how do you feed their families? They were a slash and burn mountain economy, agricultural economy. Those two problems, the obvious answer to them is, you do airdrops. Yeah, but I don't have military. How do I do airdrops? Because President Kennedy said no military. And again, the answer was obvious. Well, we use the smoke jumpers because that's what they do for a living. They drop cargo in landlocked mountainous terrain, what we now call the Frank Church Wilderness. And the CIA had a prior history with the smoke jumpers. Smoke jumpers had in Tibet dropped supplies to the Khampa guerrillas fighting the Chinese army, and they'd done it for 2 years, not long before this, and very effectively. I mean, the Tibetans kept a 300,000-man Chinese army at bay for 2 years, and it was really done by the CIA through smoke jumpers kicking cargo, and they had also been involved in. The smoke jumpers had been involved with the CIA in inserting Kuomintang Chinese back into the Chinese mainland from Taiwan. So there was the history and the logic of rigging parachutes and dropping cargo into the wilderness. And so they went to work recruiting, and they recruited mostly through a base in a springtime smoke jumper base in Silver Spring, New Mexico.
Interesting.
Just one more word about Silver
Sure.
Spring. It was close to Mexico, and our boys got in a lot of trouble down there. But they only spent a month or two down there. But smoke jumpers from all over the western United States, Missoula, North Cascades, Redding, Cave Junction, and McCall, Idaho, where my buddies were. They staffed that in the spring, and the CIA recruited largely from that group of jumpers. And those were more senior folks who'd been around a while. And
so if you had not quit, could you have been one of the ones that wound up in Laos?
My jump partner, Tex Lewis, died in 1961 in Laos. My jump partner, Yogi Eubanks, died in Laos in 1961. I would have been there.
Wow.
But I didn't learn about it until...
So you went on to law school.
Went on to law school.
So you kind of just weren't in that position to do it.
Right. And it paid much better practicing law. They
Tends
paid
to, doesn't it?
It does. They paid us $1.56 an hour to jump out of airplanes in the
oh my gosh,
the Idaho primitive area.
What did the CIA pay? Do you know?
That was interesting, and it made the job interesting. Even though these boys considered themselves patriots, they were making more money than they thought they would ever see. It was a major's pay. I don't know what GS level that is, but it's a lot higher than $1.56 an hour.
Do you know what it was at the time?
I can't put a dollar figure on it.
Oh, okay.
But it was enough to make them consider it. I mean,
well,
you're making $1.56,
go.
or you get a major's pay, and then you pay with your life.
Yeah.
You know.
And I don't think going into it that the guys thought they'd get shot at.
Right.
They got shot at a lot.
So in other words, they weren't told everything.
Absolutely not.
Before we go on the break here, we got a real quick call. Let's go ahead and take a top story. You're on the air with Patrick Lee.
Good morning.
Morning.
I really appreciate this story, and it makes you realize that, you know, there's a lot of unsung heroes out there. And this is a little bit off the subject, but, you know, speaking of the domino effect, the people that decided to go over and fight communism in Vietnam should be vindicated by phone calls like this. You know, your Noam Chomsky's and those people that accused America of trying to imperialize, you know, and all that I think they're eating crow right now. I really think that Kennedy died because of what he was doing. And I think it's the people that are in charge now are the ones that did it.
Interesting. Well, we'll come back with Patrick Lee and his book Kickers here on Top Story. 7360300 is the number to call here this morning on Top Story. Yesterday's $100 instant winning name is Wayne Stanhope.
Wayne Stanhope, congratulations.
And your $100 word of the day for today is roof.
Roof.
Now, here's how that works. You go to our website, newsradio1310.com, click on Word of the Day, type in roof for the word of the day, and then you listen tomorrow. And if you hear your name tomorrow and you played the word today, you win $100.
We got to spell roof. R-O-O-F.
R-O-O-F, yeah, just like a dog says.
It's
a roof.
This is a spelling lesson every day, too, which is good.
We have Patrick Lee with us, and Patrick is an author from Central Idaho, and he has written the book Kickers. It's about the secret war in Laos. And I know that we haven't talked much about your book yet. We've been talking more about the secret war in Laos. But tell us, you got a book signing that's coming up Saturday at Barnes & Noble and so forth.
Yes. This book is self-published through Amazon. And there's and I'm doing very well on Amazon. I've heard that self-published books sell at a rate of for 1% only 1% of self-published books sell more than 100 books total.
Oh, you're kidding.
Wow.
Why beat that?
Wow.
That's
amazing figure. Yes,
That's
you're
right.
an author.
That's
Way to
right.
go. I've sold about 840 books so far since it was published, and about 70% of that is out of Amazon. And I'm very grateful to Barnes & Noble Twin Falls for doing this signing. About 20% of my sales are out of the trunk of my car.
Exactly.
I had occasion to write a letter to Jeff Bezos of complaining about some aspect of their distribution.
Yeah.
And they answered within 3 days.
Wow.
And we talked about it. But in my letter to Jeff Bezos, I said, by the way, McCoy's Tackle Shop in Stanley, Idaho, population 63, outsold Amazon 34-22 in July. It's time you picked up the pace.
Way to go. What did he say back?
They didn't mention that.
No. So you're going to be at Barnes & Noble 12 to 4 on Saturday, and if you buy a book at Barnes & Noble during the book signing, it's a 10% off.
That's right.
Discount.
That's particularly gratifying that they will.
I know.
Discount my book. It doesn't affect my royalty.
Right.
And my royalty, anyway, is pitiful.
Yeah. That's how it works. But so this book is based on the actual events or the facts that you use from your smoke jumper buddies and the interview you did?
I explained in the last section that when we were on the air that when I did research, I found that there was very little recognition given to the smoke jumper role. Mm-hmm. And in memoriam to my buddies who had died in the war, I decided I ought to write their story, and I ought to tell the truth about the smoke jumpers, the Laos War, prisoners of war, because there was a smoke jumper prisoner of war, and government lies, if I may be so bold. And that's what I set out to do. Now, my book is not history. I've made up some facts, but the truth is not the same as facts. Mm-hmm. The truth is what we feel about what happens. And we do that. We've done that through the history of mankind. The real truth of life, the real meaning of life is conveyed by story. And so I wrote what you'd have to call an historical novel, based on interviews of 10 smoke jumpers that served in the war and survived the war, luckily.
How many smoke jumpers total lost their lives, do you know, in this war?
There were 9 deaths, including out of 92 guys who served. And one of them was a prisoner of war who died in prison. Mm. And no one in the United States negotiated with Laos, directly or otherwise, about the release of prisoners held by the Pathet Lao, the communist Pathet Lao.
Because it didn't exist.
Because it really did exist, but we denied that it was a real government. And the government to this day is still affected with a "we were never there" mentality. Yeah. And they literally did not negotiate for the release of Jim DeBruin. And for the reasons that you and I have just discussed.
How long was he in prison?
I believe nobody really knows the date of his death, but it was probably about 6 years.
Okay.
So which administration would have been able to do that? Would it cover Johnson or Nixon or?
It was
Kennedy?
A timely intervention would have been Johnson, the Johnson administration. But we weren't negotiating anything with anybody then.
Right.
We're going to take another break here. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about this and see if you've had any repercussions after writing the book. Author Patrick Lee is our guest here this morning on Top Story. 773-60300 is the number to call here this morning on Top Story. And author Patrick Lee from McCall, Idaho is our guest. And the book Kickers, which is about the secret war on Laos. And again, this is a book written on a basis of fiction, but on true facts. And you're going to be doing a book signing at Barnes & Noble this Saturday from noon until 4.
Correct.
All right. When you wrote the book, did you get any black helicopters flying around your house or any people in black sedans driving up and saying, if you publish this, we're going to come and get you?
Is this why you're hiding out in Stanley?
That's where everybody hides out.
Apparently.
No, I haven't. I think there's enough disclosure over time, it's been 50 years that the government isn't interested in what I know and disclose. And my smoke jumper pals really haven't, there's been no blowback there, though some thought there might be. But no, to answer your question.
But when you interviewed some of the smoke jumpers, they did have a little concern maybe at times when they were answering your questions?
Depending on the question, how specific, how close I was getting to the bone, they would look at each other. As a lawyer, I wouldn't do this, but I started interviewing them in groups because they feed on each other's comments and things get rolling. They would look at each other on a specific subject, I can't recall any in particular, and say, did Gar say we could talk about this? And some senior member would say, yeah, that's okay, Gar said we could. The reference to Gar was the then head of Air Branch within the CIA, a fellow by the name of Gar Thorsrud, who's been with the CIA for a long time, and Gar's a true blue CIA man. He won't talk to anybody about anything.
Is he still alive?
He's still alive.
Do they still contact him? And
they do. It's an interesting relationship.
Are they waiting for Gar to die so they can just spill the beans? I mean, think how many years they've had hanging. They keep saying, does Gar say it's okay? It's like, wait till Gar kicks the bucket. They're going to just have their own tell-alls.
That may be, but I think I've got all the beans that they can remember. They're as old as I am.
How old are they now?
Between 77 and 80.
Yeah. So did they kind of open up more to you since you had a history of being a smoke jumper yourself?
I think so. I knew some of them personally 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And jumped with them in a two-man stick out of an airplane. So they were willing to talk, and they introduced me to people I did not know. They swore to my character. For example, they introduced me to a very interesting man by the name of T.J. Thompson. TJ, if I'm not supposed to talk about you, I'm sorry, but I got to talk about you. TJ's I think 77. In 1973, Morris Udall blew the whistle on the secret CIA air base at Marana, Arizona, and that's where the smoke jumpers in the CIA were headquartered. They did a lot of air delivery, air rescue research there. Some very interesting tales out of that. But Congress they were angry at the end of the war because they were being blamed for a lot of things that they didn't even know about. And so they turned on the CIA, as did most of the country, and they directed them to close down the air base at Marana. And supposedly they did, but they really didn't.
They just showed that it was closed.
The CIA air base secret base at Marana was moved in two vans and a pickup truck to a ranch in South Texas, 600,000-acre ranch that was leased from a patriot for a case of wild turkey a year.
There you go.
Are you serious?
And that it's not classified as a CIA base anymore, but they gave it to a smoke jumper. In effect, they gave the operation at Marana to a smoke jumper. That smoke jumper was TJ. TJ is the best parachute rigger in the world and has been for 50 years. He lectures Delta Force and SEAL groups about parachute matters. And he said to me in an interview breakfast one day in the Bass Pro Shop, San Antonio, Texas, he says, I'm 70, whatever it was, and I'm tired of saying I didn't do things I did do. He said, you know that Somali boat drop where they shot the Somali pirates?
Yeah.
I said, yeah. He said, I rigged that boat. I rigged that drop. He didn't shoot the Somali pirates, but he rigged it. He says, "I don't give a damn what Delta Force says. I rigged it." So
the truth comes out. Give him a little wild turkey and hear what stories he's going to tell.
No
my
kidding.
Goodness!
Wow. Well, when we come back, we'll recap your book signing and such. And
anyone who has a question for Patrick Lee, call. Very interesting.
He has all the answers to the secret
Everyone
war in
who
Laos.
has the conspiracies. Yeah.
7360300 is the number to call here this morning on Top Story. I wanted to let you know that Pat Hartzell with Stanley and Company is ready to hook you up with a low-end honey loader.
He's ready.
That's right. A lot of dairies and feedlots, big feedlot operations here in this area, use the low-end honey loader because of its ability to load all types of manure, liquid, frozen, dry, and do it up to 7 miles an hour. So it just eliminates a lot of other labor. It eliminates the manure in places it's not supposed to be, puts it in places where it should be. And there's probably a lot of other feedlot operations in this area that could use one of these, but they don't have one yet. But they want to see it in operation before they make that commitment. So you call Pat, and he can hook you up so you can see one of these low-end honey loaders in operation from Stanley and Company, and you might be the next owner of a low-end honey loader. His number is 280-1167. That's 280-1167, and Pat Hartzell is the guy's name. Patrick, I want to thank you because I have never really understood the history of the secret war in Laos. I've heard mention of it over the years, but I've never really known what it was. And I guess looking back, were we successful or not in that endeavor? Depends how you measure success.
The smoke jumpers among themselves says we won our war, but when the Vietnam War ended, everyone in the CIA, including all the jumpers, were ordered immediately out of Laos. What the CIA did thereafter, and with the smoke jumpers, however, was a fine moral end to the war, a courageous and thing to be commended. And that is they rescued Vang Pao, the leader of the Hmong fighting forces, and perhaps 60,000 Hmong in the face of threats by the Pathet Lao to murder the entire population.
Wow.
And that's why we have a lot of Hmong in this country in various places, California and Minnesota, Wisconsin.
So we brought them back over
refugees.
here then.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because they were actually fighting for us in that area of the world.
Right. And this was in the face of testimony in Congress by a State Department representative. And I think I've got this just right. We have no obligation to the Hmong. We have set this up to be out within 24 hours. But we got them out.
Wow.
And it was a smoke jumper by the name of Jerry Daniels, who died mysteriously in Bangkok years later, still working, I believe, for the CIA. Jerry Daniels, who got him out.
One question, and there was kind of a mention of it earlier. Do you think that it was this operation that might have led to the assassination of Kennedy?
I have no basis for making a connection, but a writer friend of mine who now lives in Ketchum by the name of Charlie Brandt has written a book about the mobs involved that touches on deeply on the mob involvement in Kennedy's death, and he's very persuasive about that. He's a former assistant attorney general in the state of Delaware, and the lead murder prosecutor in Delaware for many years. He's Italian, and he knows what he's talking about when he talks about the mob.
Wow, that's interesting.
That's really interesting.
You know the name of his book?
Yes. The title is "I Heard You Paint Houses," and that's mob lingo for "I hear you're a hit man."
Oh, interesting.
Being blood on the wall.
I heard you paint houses. So after your book, Kickers, that might be something else that folks might want to pick
that one up. The movie industry, De Niro, has they're in the business now of turning it into a movie.
Oh, really?
And it'll be a good one.
And what about your book? You might have potential to be a movie as well.
Everyone out there in movie land, here's a product for you. Kickers, a novel of the Secret War.
But you're going to be at Barnes & Noble Saturday, 12 to 4, and you get 10% off if you buy a book at Barnes & Noble during the book signing, and you'll be happy to sign their book for them.
They'll all be signed by me.
Yeah,
all right.
Which is
and the
nice.
one that you sent me was signed, and I appreciate that.
Very good.
I'm going to have to read that. We do have a caller. Top story, you're on the air. Good morning.
Good morning. Hey, I don't think the smoke jumper, operation got Kennedy killed, but his willingness to go out and fight communism and stop the spread of Marxism in the world, that's what got him killed.
Do you think that's an accurate statement?
I think it was, and I'm saying this because I'm a close friend of Charlie Brandt's, and I think Charlie's got it right. There were a lot of people who hated Kennedy for a lot of reasons, but the mob had a big fat reason for hating him, and Charlie's collected a lot of evidence that indicates that the mob was behind it.
Wow.
And sometimes people say, and my husband says this, if you have this and people know about it, how can people keep a secret for so long? As so many people involved to get this done. But I guess they do, because they got this secret war done and no one knew about it. And they're still not talking.
And a big thing, if I have just a few seconds.
You got about 5 seconds.
All right. The press was not permitted into the CIA-based Longqing. There were no press passes in the war.
Interesting.
Oh.
Patrick Lee, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So interesting. Good luck with your book.
Time for the Huckabee Report. You can hear the Huckabee Report each weekday at this time, brought to you exclusively by Waddell & Reed, Laura Nelson, Josh Funk, and Steve Stanger, financial advisors, and the number is 736-6563. Now, all week long, we've been talking about a new sponsor to Top Story, and that's the folks at Clearwater Power Equipment, and they are at 252 Washington Street South, and that's where General Building Supply used to be.
Jeez.
All right, sorry, I got to sign back into the computer.
I really hate for the show to interrupt you.
I know, exactly.
Sorry.
No, but at any rate, they carry Husqvarna's full line of outdoor products. Husqvarna servicing dealers have both the experience and the knowledge to know outdoor power equipment inside and out. And I know there's a lot of Husqvarna equipment in this area. And if you have some and have wondered where you can take it to get it serviced, now you can do that at Clearwater Power Equipment. They also carry Echo, which has the best warranty in the business with a 5-year residential and 2-year commercial warranty. Echo's been a leading innovator and manufacturer of outdoor power equipment for over 40 years. And they carry that stuff, they service that stuff. And if you have a big lawnmower like I do, and you think, what in the world am I going to do with it? Where am I going to store it this winter? Then you get a hold of Clearwater Power Equipment, and they can store it for you. Ask them about their storage program. Their number is 734-7767, and at 252 Washington Street, right there where General Building Supply used to be. You can't miss it. So tell them that Kelly and Jill sent you.
Yes, please do that.
I just have to say that Mr. Lee was one of the more interesting interviews we've had in a long time.
Yeah.
There is so much, and I have never really been a history buff, I guess, but the more you find out about stuff like this, the more it makes you want to go into it and go back and look into it. He sent me a copy of his book, so I'm going to read that book. I'm going to look into getting a copy of the other one that he talked about. I
heard you paint houses.
Heard you paint houses, yeah. It's just so much of this history that, I mean, America has been such a shining light to the rest of the world for how many, 2.5 centuries, but yet we have a dark side. And
we have a dark side, all right, on some things.
And it's interesting to look into that dark side sometimes too. And
I think Tom and I are going to go by there. I think Tom would really enjoy it, serving in Vietnam, But he said it's not just for guys. Half the reviews on Amazon are from women, and there is a love story in there.
Yeah, he has. I was looking last night. It has 42 reviews, 4.8 stars.
That's awesome.
So, and most of them were 5 stars. So, it's got to be a good book because those people on Amazon They are ruthless. If they don't like something, even a little bit, it's 1 star. It's the worst book they'd ever read. So, at any rate, hey, we're done for today. Tomorrow is Friday.
We have Debbie Walker from the Walker Center again, remember?
Debbie Thomas from the Walker Center?
Debbie Thomas. Why do I have Debbie Thomas Walker?
I don't know. It's
Debbie Thomas. Thank you, from the Walker Center.
Yeah, so we'll be
it's
talking
in here
about
wrong.
There
okay.
you go. All right, we'll see you tomorrow. Goodbye, Jill.
Bye, Cal.